Hey there, this is Darren. Happy New Year. Wisdom from a mentor. As it's New Year's Day, a lot of people are making resolutions. I don't want to talk about, everyone's talking about resolutions. I want to talk about what matters most to you and your message for this year, for the people who are going to listen to you and what you have to say. Hey there, Lynn Rose. So my buddy Dave Fitzgerald was this amazing man. He's a great comedian, very funny. He's the reason I started the Humor Bootcamp. He taught me. I went to Vinny and I learned from him, and I went to Dave Fitzgerald and I learned from him. Well, back in the 90s, in 1996, I believe, he got diagnosed with cancer. And he was so adamant that he had this gift of humor and comedy. In fact, one of the reviews here on the wall said that Dave could milk a routine, a bit, a subject better than anyone. And I remember when he got afflicted with cancer and he was dealing with it, the way he coped with it is he decided that he was going to bring levity and laughter to humor, to cancer, to what he was dealing with. See, you and I have a story. We have adversities we've overcome. We have mountains we climbed. But are you using your challenges to help other people? Are you telling your story? Well, I remember he was a headline comedian. I was just a wannabe, an opening act at best back then. And I went with him as he started testing his cancer material, which sounds weird. And back in the mid-1990s, no one even mentioned or dare mention the word cancer from the stage. You just didn't do it back then. It's so cool that people are so much more open and talking about it now, because that's what we need to heal and be inspired. So I would watch David go up on stage and test new material and bomb. And here I am feeling bad for my mentor, and I finally had the courage. I worked up the courage one night to pull him aside and say, Dave, what are you doing? Like, you're a headliner. There's only so many comedy clubs in New England, and you could lose your spot if you're bombing. And he said something brilliant that I think we all need the reminder of. And if we've never heard it, you need to hear it. If you've heard it, we need that reminder. When he would tell his cancer jokes at the beginning, he was trying to figure out what was happening in the minds of the audience. What were they thinking? You might have heard me say the most important thought process is the most important part of a presentation is the thought process in the audience's mind. Which is true. So he was trying to figure out when he would tell these jokes about his story and what he went through. The audience would go, hush. And after doing it several times and watching him bomb, I finally had the courage. I pulled him aside. I said, Dave, what? I love you. What are you doing? You're going to lose your spot in rotation in all these comedy clubs, and this is what you do. And he said, Darren, I went to a Zig Ziglar conference years ago, and I heard this guy say something. And I asked him for permission to talk about it because it struck me. He said, anything worth doing right is worth doing wrong first. Anything worth doing right is worth doing wrong first. Hey there, Bob Lynch. Thanks for joining me. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you, Lynn, too. And anyone who's watching this recording. So, anything worth doing right is worth doing wrong first. And I think so many times we try something a certain way, or we try something new, and we realize we got to do it wrong in order to learn the lessons to do it right. So what Dave had learned, as soon as he mentioned cancer on stage, that the audience thought it was like his last lecture, like it was his last routine and the guy was dying. So everything else he said, they shut their brains down. They felt bad for him. So they had that sympathy or empathy, and they couldn't hear what else he was saying. They couldn't find the levity in what he was doing because their brain went off on a tangent. So what he realized, he had to adjust it and tell people early on, and first off, hey, first let me just tell you about something that happened last summer. I was really sick, and I got to tell you, I am in the best shape of my life. I'm healthier than I've ever been. And he cushioned and handled that mindset before he went really deep, so they didn't have that thought. but he was willing to figure out how to do it because he cared so much about his audience and so much about the outcome for them that he said, I'm going to find a way to make cancer funny. Because he wasn't making fun of the disease. He was bringing out his human side and his challenge that he had with the disease and through the disease. And that's exactly what you and I need to do. We need to tell our heart-wrenching story, the real authentic, deep story in order to help other people. But you got to be willing to test the waters. You got to be willing to do it wrong before you can do it right. Anything worth doing wrong is worth doing right first. So have some courage. Tell your story. Inspire people by example. Sometimes as speakers, we want people to love us and we want to be the big hero. But let me ask you this. If we saw what you did off stage, would we be inspired? Think about it. If this meant anything to you, if you thought this was good, please share it, please comment, but most importantly, please tell your story. But think about that. If people saw you off stage, would they be inspired? Happy New Year.